Heather, welcome to the Money Love Podcast. I'm thrilled to have you today. We have a lot that we're going to cover today. I just feel like the conversation, we're really going to dive deep and take it to a lot of places, but thrilled to talk to you. Welcome to the show. And I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation.
Good. Well, kick us off. Tell us all about Heather, your brand, and we'll start there. I know you have a very interesting story and a very interesting background. So I want to hear about that.
It's the when as we are creating or having this conversation right now, I feel like I'm on the other side of one of my other identity crises or up levels. It's always like, we go through these cycles of evolution and how like the work we do and what we talk about. So when I look back at how I started my journey, mothering was the thing that kind of it was the first trigger for me. And I became a mom when I was 18 years old. It was my first holy shit moment per se. And kind
Mm-hmm.
of people talk a lot about like awakenings. And I just remember thinking the second I looked at my son, I never wanted us, myself and him, to become a statistic. And I never wanted to feel like I was failing. And I was 18 years old. I was single. And I did everything in my power to do that. And so I kind of went from an underperformer to an overperformer. And so previous to becoming a mother, I was the rebel, but I was also like the critical thinker. I was the, but why? Why do we do that? I was the opposite of a people pleaser. But mothering did something to me where I was living in this chronic state of, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. If I fail at this job or this role as mother, air quotes, I have failed as a human. I have failed as a woman. And so I actually was seeking role models. I was seeking female role models who were doing two things. They felt like they were doing mothering on their terms very well, and they were not neglecting their desires, whatever that was, personally or professionally. I could not find one woman. This was
Yeah.
almost 19 years ago, and that was really my aha. So I did what these other women were doing, and I gave and I gave and I gave and I gave, and I felt dead inside. Like physically, I was like, I cannot continue like this. And it was like a secret that I had to keep myself. So then I started to seek professional help. I started to go to the therapist, go to the doctors, and the feedback was either let's just talk about it or suck it up, buttercup. This is adulthood. Like you're young and
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to suck. So fast forward, I'm doing the things. I'm starting to get those whispers of like, not this, there's something more inside of me. I start finding spirituality and mindfulness and meditation. And my son and I are just like co creating our lives together. So I'm like, he gets anxiety. I don't know how to manage anxiety, not my anxiety, anxiety in general. So let's solve that problem. And it was just like this becoming together. And then 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. I was in startup in my business. I just left my corporate job as a social worker. And that was not my aha moment. That was, I had 9 years of personal development under my belt. I had the mentors, I had the coaches, I attended the retreats. That was my permission to live. And I had to fight like hell to figure out how to feel alive as a woman while also going after my desires and raising my kids. And I had 3 boys at that point.
Wow. So you said the cancer diagnosis wasn't your wake up moment. Did that like shake anything in you though? Was it like, I mean, were you just like what was that moment like, right? Like finding that out. Because I mean,
Yeah.
to get that diagnosis, I mean, what, you were in your 20s when that happened?
Yeah. I was 27. It was stage
Yeah.
4.
Wow.
I thought in my mind, okay, I have like stage 1 or something like that. And I knew
Yeah.
mentally as like stage 4, there's no stage 5, especially for that diagnosis. And
Yeah.
they're like, you have this, you have stage 4. And I was like, shit, like this is
Whoa.
real.
Yeah.
And it really, honestly, when I look back and I talk a lot about this, it made me face fear. Like, I was living with a fear that I might die. But it made me face my fear and take action anyways, even though uncertainty was right there. And so I had to, like, so often when I ask people, like, why aren't you doing this? What are you? They're like, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to lose something. I'm afraid I'm going to burn out. I'm afraid, fear of success, fear of failure, or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, but you realize you're not doing something because of fear. And when I got diagnosed, I didn't have, I call it no back door. I didn't have the privilege of not taking action because I had to heal,
Mm.
even though there was no guarantee that I had tomorrow, which is the reality of life, anyways.
Yeah. And I'm sure that moment just, I mean, being in that moment, it's just, I'm sure, I mean, I think for me, it would kind of be a mindset of like, well, why not? Like, what's there to, like, honestly, like, what's there to lose at this point? Like, the outcomes are either like I continue moving myself forward or like worst case scenario here. So, like, at this point, it's like, why not? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when you kind of think about it that way, it's like, that's kind of like, the fire under your butt or like the wind at your back of just like, okay, well, to your point, it's like I have no other option just to keep myself moving forward. So what happened after that? Like when you were like, moving myself forward, what did that look like?
I think in the moment, the why not came after I was out of survival mode. So when you get a diagnosis, like there's something I talk about in my book and on my TEDx talk. It's like there's this sustainable ambition model or triangle I used, and it's you have survival mode, and then you have the state of momentum, and then you're kind of thriving,
Mm.
and then this creative abundance state. Most people are in a state of survival. So when I'm in a survival, it could be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially. And when you're living in that state, and you could have like shit tons of money, but you're in a mental financial deficit. And so survival state, like you're like, there's not enough, there's not enough. And you have like, you're good, you're set, but mentally you're not. Um, so many people are living there. So when I was living there, I was just the doer of the day. And I did what I needed to do to get through the day. And when I was doing that, I was like, okay, what do I need to do now? What do I need to do now? It wasn't until the next level and the next level where I was like in a state of momentum or thrival where I'm like, you have one life, right? Now I have the
Mm.
privilege of having a little bit of capacity to dream bigger and give myself permission. But it was quite interesting in the moment to watch myself go, I don't give a shit anymore. Like observing how I would let the energy of others affect me. And I'm like, I don't care about their judgment anymore. My like primal instinct is to survive and to live.
Mm-hmm.
So if I didn't like someone's energy, I didn't let them come visit me.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
where now I can do that in a different capacity where I'm like, oh, I should, I can handle it. Where I was like, nope, I don't like your energy. You're an energy sucker. We're not letting you in my bubble. And so it was like boundaries on steroids.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So eventually you started moving out. And yeah, I've watched your TEDx talk before, and that was part that really stuck out to me, just that progression, right? That progression out of like survival into thriving. And then creative abundance is the top one. What's the third one?
Momentum. No,
Momentum.
there's survival, momentum, thrival, and then creative abundance.
Survival, momentum, thrival, creative abundance. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. No, I see that a lot in my world too, whether it's, we're talking about just like being in survival mode with money, being in survival mode during motherhood, right? Like I'm a mom, I have a 2-year-old. Um and I know something that you said earlier was really interesting to me. Like when you said that you set out to find moms who were kind of like not burnt out all the time, and like actually living a life that they want to live. And you were like, it was really tough to find. And I'm like, yeah, that honestly is not super shocking to me, right? Because I know the title of your book that came out a couple years ago is, Dying to be a Good Mom. And
Hmm.
I'd like to just kind of talk about that for a little bit. Why did you title your book that? And when you use that term, like what does that actually mean, dying to be a good mom?
Yeah. So figuratively, my physical body was dying. I had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. But before that, I was dying to be good for others. And I know I'm not alone in that. I was dying mentally, I was dying emotionally, and I was dying spiritually to be good for other people. And eventually my physical body caught up. And although, yes, cancer diagnosis, debate about like, how do we get disease? And some people are like, you healed yourself. And I'm like, we're not even getting into this combo. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But I knew that I needed to take a holistic approach, and no doctor or medicine was going to be a one size fits all for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that if I was in a state of lack mentally and emotionally and spiritually, and when I say spiritually, I'm not talking about like a higher power, I'm talking about desires, like my soul desires. Um, when I could not be living in a state of lack in those energies in my life. And physical energy, like, yes, the physical body, but people always ask me, like, how do you manage time? And I'm like, 24 hours, how to manage the 24 hours in a day is not the core issue. It's the other three energies. And so, they say become the type of person that you needed. And I know culturally as women, we're taught to give, 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 and receiving means you're taking away from others. And it was just that little rebel in me, that little like questioner
Mm-hmm.
that was coming back to life going, that doesn't even make sense. Like I actually remember
Mm-hmm.
being told one time, because I used to love, even in high school, investing in my hair. And I remember specifically a family member telling me when I became a mother, now you're going to have to buy the cheap shampoo. And I thought, if investing in my hair and investing another $10 in a bottle of shampoo brings me actual joy, you are telling me I need to strip myself of that joy, and there's not enough for other people to go around, that I can't put that $10, or maybe not buy extra clothes or spend,
Mm-hmm.
like, be mindful of my spending somewhere else and invest it in what is a priority for me, what makes me feel good. And yes, being mindful of that and having enough, but like, it logically made no sense to me. Take away from what brings you joy so you can give, give, give to other people. And I was scared, so I bought into that belief, and I was like, nope, to be a good mother, you need to give everything you have. And I could quickly see how that strategy was killing me mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And when I'm talking to women now and they say, I work a lot with women who have businesses, whether they're in startup or 7-figure plus, they're just at different levels. And it could be in the relationships or how they treat themselves, and it's always like next level, different identity, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you can feel really good in your mind, your body, your soul, in your relationships, and go after your desires. I'm living proof of it, and I actually believe the secret we're all searching for is that, like, the better you feel, that's how things come to you. But we are taught the opposite. We're taught to restrict, not ask for help, not go after what we want. And so living is actually the quote unquote secret, but we got to figure out how to do that first.
Yeah. And I'll just add in some examples that I see too in my world a lot, like even just how this comes up with money. There was a reel or something that came across my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and it had like close to 100,000 likes. So it was clearly resonating with people. But it was this reel that said something like, your kid does not need like a fifth pair of the same shoes that they have in four other colors. Like, you need to go buy yourself a new bra. Go buy
Mm-hmm.
yourself a new bra. And it's
Yeah.
so funny. Like, even this morning when I was getting dressed, I was literally having the thought. I was like, I have one bra. I have like my nursing bras I have from like when I was nursing, which was like I stopped nursing well over a year ago. And I have one bra. And I'm like, even when I think about me spending my money, and I hear this from women all the time, it's like my spending habits, like I don't spend money on me. Like
Yeah.
the money goes to the kids. And we could find examples like that of just in every area, right? Where it's like your time is going to them, your money is going to them, your energy, your mental well-being, like it's all going to either the kids or the spouse or just to like other people, right? And then there's just so little left for you. But it kind of like it was this post that was like obviously lighthearted and it was funny because there were I mean I was reading through the comments. It was like so funny how like the moms are like the bra I'm wearing right now is like 10 years old. Like I do need a new bra and my kid doesn't need anything else. But that's why I love this conversation with you because I just think like it's so true. I think that any mom can probably find a time in their life or an example in their life, like what you said, where like somehow along the way the message got sent to them that like being a good mom is like being a sacrificial mom, where it's like
Mhm.
everyone comes first and then it's you, right? Eating after everybody eats. If there's any money left over, then I can spend it on me and do something for me. But it's just like everyone first and then me after. So, anyways, I saw that post and it made me chuckle when you were saying that. It
Well,
popped into my head.
and I see those things and they make me angry because well, that not so much that one. The ones that makes me really angry is like, oh, I had a pot of coffee today, like blah blah blah, like just the exhaustion. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
we're just perpetuating this conversation. But we
Yeah.
have swung. So I've been a mom for almost 20 years, and I cannot get over in the 2 decades how parenting has changed with social media. Like Instagram was barely
Mm.
around when I had kids and or like at the beginning. And I look at how the pressures of modern culture and mothering have changed. Like the fact that it is normal for children to have Starbucks every day, like a teenager, and wear Lululemon from head to toe is mind blowing to me, like absolute mind blowing.
Sephora
When
hauls.
Yes. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
raising
know.
three. And I go to Sephora once and I'm like, I have no idea. I'm raising 3 boys and we have other expenses, but I'm like, I have no idea how parents of children can afford these lifestyles. Like, I
Mhm.
really don't. And I'm not even talking about like it's just what are you teaching your children when they become adults or when you are now so angry and resentful and burnt out financially and emotionally that when you're like, oh, 18, and then they go on their own. No, they don't because they have no financial literacy skills. They have no financial
Mhm.
independence. They're still on your tit, metaphorically speaking. And you're so angry and resentful and you're like, but I felt guilty. I didn't want them to go without, when all their friends have this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, your lack of emotional discomfort and emotional regulation is actually creating a huge burden and bigger problem here that we're perpetuating. And so I
Yeah.
understand the pressure and the emotional discomfort, but like we need to like just slowly with baby micro actions and micro boundaries, like take back our power and control of how we want to feel.
Yeah. And I'll just second that too. I can't even tell you how many coaching sessions I've had with moms specifically who it's mostly like when the kids get a little bit older, I would say like 10 plus, like middle school slash like high school age. But it's just this notion of, to your point, I think social media has completely warped this idea of what being a good mom or like a good parent, but probably more so specifically a good mom is, where it's like this this notion of always being able to say yes to everything that your kid wants, right? Like the kid comes to you and they want the new sneakers or they need the new face wash or they need this, that, or whatever. And it's like always telling them yes, always telling them yes, always and then the parents over here, like, I don't know why we're having financial issues. I don't know why we're living paycheck to paycheck. And I'm like, well, just go look at all these things that you're spending on your kids. Like simply just, it's not even really stuff that they need. Like to your point, it's like the 10th pair of sneakers or it's like giving them the credit card and letting them just go up to Sephora just completely, unfiltered, getting whatever they want. And it's like this idea that that's what being a good parent is just like telling your kids yes all the time. But you said something that I kind of want to dive into about this notion of just like being, I did you call it emotionally immature or emotionally uncomfortable?
Probably emotionally uncomfortable. That's the
Okay,
title
yeah,
of
that's the name of your
my
podcast, right?
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about that. Like, let's define what do you, in your world, whether we're talking about parenting or just anything else, like, what is the definition or how do you describe being emotionally uncomfortable?
Yeah. So my actual world and podcast used to be called Mama's in Control. And then everyone kept saying, I want to be in control. I want to be in control. And it's like, well, first of all, control is not a feeling, right? It's a state and it's usually a coping strategy. So then we become
Mm,
over controlling. And it was after my diagnosis when I realized people say they want joy, they say they want abundance, they want to thrive. And I kind of call bullshit on it a little bit because you want to feel the joy, you want to feel the excess, but you don't want to feel your resistance. You don't want to feel your fear. You don't want to feel your guilt. So we avoid, right? We overdo, we overgive, we over nurture, we avoid to avoid feelings. And so being emotionally uncomfortable, I actually don't believe things are hard, Paige, that I we can do hard things is the most triggering like
mm,
sentence. I'm like, choose your hard. Things aren't hard. We are addicted to hard. We love a hard hustle. We are choose your emotional discomfort because I don't
mm,
believe it's hard to send like an email. It's emotionally uncomfortable. I don't believe it's
mm,
hard to hold a boundary with your kids. It's emotionally uncomfortable. I don't believe it's hard to have a conversation with someone about boundaries or like something's not working for you anymore. It's emotionally uncomfortable. And so being emotionally uncomfortable is feeling a feeling, processing it, and taking the action anyways. And so if you want the joy, I mean, there's different strategies for everything. It's emotionally uncomfortable to thrive because you are going to become a leader. You are going to be break generational patterns. You are going to say, yeah, I'm making more money than I've ever made. I have the time flexibility and I have more energy and I feel fulfilled and happy in my personal and professional life. That's emotionally uncomfortable to sit in that, knowing that other people are not thriving, even when you're trying to help them. And it's also emotionally uncomfortable to take the first leap into uncertainty when you know, like, you don't know what's on the other side of that. It's emotionally
yeah.
uncomfortable to hold, a boundary when you're like, we've already spent what we need to spend. And I know I could say yes to this, that we can afford it, but I need to break a pattern and therefore I need to say no.
Mm. I've never heard somebody describe it that way. I mean, what you're saying about describing things as hard,
Hmm.
I mean, I think you're so right in that like we've just become so like committed and almost like addicted to just like everything being hard. Everything's so hard. Money's so hard, parenting is so hard, business is so hard, marriage is so hard. Like it's just so hard. And like what I see, I don't know if you see this like, in your world, but I have women that come to me all the time and they're like, I feel this desire to change and I feel this desire to like do things differently. I'm feeling this pull. But usually when I ask them, like, okay, well, what's stopping you? They're like, well, I just think this is going to be really hard. Like, okay. So, I mean, I think it's like if you're thinking about something being hard versus there being a lot of emotional discomfort involved in something, to
Hmm.
me, that is a radically different perspective shift. Because for me, when I'm thinking about like, okay, approaching something and I'm positioning it from the lens of like, oh, this is going to be really hard versus there's probably going to be a lot of emotional discomfort that comes along with this. But then you can bring that back to like, that's cool because I can handle emotional discomfort. I think
Hmm.
it's just this word hard that we're like, oh, it's so hard, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stop versus like the emotional discomfort, which is at least like start you. Cause I mean, to me, that just feels totally different. Like I can do emotional discomfort
Hmm.
versus like, oh, I'm not going to start at all because this is going to be really hard.
Yeah, and it's in short, tiny bursts. So there's
Mm,
every area of my life I think about this. I have so much evidence that if I consistently lean into something, I can accomplish great things. And the only reason why I have evidence of that is because I haven't quit. And I tell people all the time, like I'll have clients that will circle around and, I'm like, be all in or be all out. And I don't
Mhm.
mean be all in and, from sunrise to sunset, you're trying to kill it, because that might last about a week.
Yeah.
But if you gave 60 to 70%, like Paige, I'm sure your people and my people are probably very similar. People who decide they want change and they invest in coaching, they're like ambitious. They have dreams and desires, right? People
Mhm.
who don't take action like ever, they're not the ones investing in support. It's the ambitious doers. And one of my strategies, and one thing I had to learn, and this was taught to me by a personal trainer, like a strength coach, he's
Mhm.
like, 60%, Heather. I was like, 60%. I'm supposed to walk out of the gym killing it. I'm supposed to be sweating. I'm supposed to be feeling like I was mildly dying. He's like, 60% consistently. And you only have to do it 4 to 5 times a week, maybe even three. And I was like, what's the point of that? He's like, just commit to 3 months. And when I did it like that, I was like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, the work here is not about, I hear people say, I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. I'm like, yeah, that's not the work you need to do. The knowing of what you need to do is not the work. The doing of it is the work. And the
Yeah.
doing of it less, but better, consistently, that is the identity shifter. That's the game changer. And so when people on the outside are like, I don't know how you do it all, it's like, one, I don't physically do everything, I don't do all. But when I do, I'm consistent and I'm doing less better. And that is the recipe for success in any area of your life. But that is not sexy. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
that is the mind game, because you're changing your brain, and it's like your brain is just blown. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just need to be consistent. Like, even just watching how I treated my business this summer, where I had more time with my family than ever before, but I was consistent and focused on specific measurable things in my business, and how that's benefiting me in the fall. Mind blowing. Mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this kind of goes into something that you talk a lot about, which I honestly don't know a lot about this topic. I'm really excited to dive into this with you, which is just the energetic time management. I will tell you, like, I'll just share this for me personally. I feel like time is an area for me, probably like the one area for me that I still feel like I have quite a bit of work in to do, because I just find myself a lot being in whatever you want to call it, like time scarcity. Oh my gosh, there's just not enough time in the day. Like, I look at all the things that I want to do and the time I want to do it in, and I'm just like, the thought that my brain wants to offer me is like, there's just not enough time. Like, there's not enough time to do all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I'm very focused on the time. Like, I'm very focused on the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, like looking at the calendar and, looking at everything I want to like cram into that period of time. And so
Mm-hmm.
you talk about something called energetic time management,
Management.
which I don't really even know what that is. Can you take us through that? I'm like
Yeah.
so excited to hear about this.
So this was a concept that I created during my recovery,
Mm,
in when I was going through treatment in cancer, my cancer treatment. And I had so much personal development under my belt previous to that. The mentors, the books, the coaches, the retreats. And I was like, I need a step by step process. Like, I'm not a super process oriented person. I can be both I'm kind of like, I ride the line. I know I need a good system and process, but I also love to have fun. And I actually do not like to feel restrictive towards a
mm,
calendar. Like, I
yeah.
will plan my week and my days, but the second you tell me what to do, even if it was self-induced, I'm going to rebel against it.
Yeah.
So people say to me, I don't like feeling restrictive. I like going with the flow. And I was like, well, the reality is, if you're not disciplined in something, even a little bit, if you don't put energy and effort towards it, it's not going to happen. So energetic time management, or ETM, is a completely different thought concept. And I have to say, this is super inspired by the work of Danielle Laporte, and her original book that changed my life, which came out when I was diagnosed, called The Desire Map. But it's also the core foundation of essentially manifesting. And it's not the thing you're after, it's the feeling. And so I had to convince myself and learn that I didn't want a bigger house. I wanted more space. I didn't want more money. I wanted more freedom or
Mm.
safety or spaciousness. I still had the desire to go for these physical things, whether it was like buying another home or going on a vacation or making more money or whatever it is. But I knew that it wasn't the thing that I was after, it was the feeling. And so, number one, I found that was a huge relator to time. So when I'm like, I don't have enough, because it didn't matter if I was going after the business goal or if I was going after something, it was the feeling that I had to align. So I'm always asking myself now, how do I want to feel in my time? So, number one, and I teach people this on my website. You can go to heatherchauvin.com, go to free resources, and I just have so many resources on my website. But there's something called the 10-minute habit rule, and I teach people how to do that. And so, number one is I like to use this journal prompt. Wouldn't it be nice if? And you're using this journal prompt and you're writing down all your desires. There's a million ways you could use this journal prompt. Sometimes I tell people to do it in their business. Sometimes I tell it to do it their whole life, your parenting, your health. Like it could just be one bucket of your life. It could be money or your whole life. Everything that you are writing down on that list is a desire.
Mm.
Your page is going to look very different than mine, right? Your journal. So we have to realize that the desires in us are for us. Number one, we typically abandon desire, right? Energy, spiritual energy, desire. We abandon that. So if you don't
Mm.
trust that those desires are for you, you're not going to go after them. So you need to take this serious. Number two is once you have that list, you're going to look at them and you're going to ask yourself, what is the feeling that I'm after? Like, what is the core feeling that I'm actually after on this line item? I want to feel abundant. I want to feel spacious. I want to feel alive. I want to feel connected. I want to feel strong. When I literally was at my lowest point, I had nothing left to give. I'm like, I want to live. Wouldn't it be
Mm.
nice if I lived? Wouldn't it be nice if I went into remission? Wouldn't it be nice if I could get out of bed and had energy? And, I was like, what is this? And I came to like the word alive because I literally was dying. So I'm like, I want to feel alive.
Mm.
And I tell this story that one night I was on the bathroom floor um, in recovery at home. And I was so scared. I woke up in a panic. My body was in a state of fight or flight. And I was like telling myself the story mentally, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I had to coach myself getting back to center, being like, you're not going to die. You're alive. Like you're here. You're present. You are not dead. Like get back to the present moment. What you think is going to happen in reality are two different things. So come back.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
then I knew I wanted to live, right? So my line item, wouldn't it be nice if I lived? Didn't know if that's true or not. Tomorrow's uncertain. Wouldn't it be nice if I lived through this? So I'm like, you're alive, you're alive, you're alive. What do you want? I want to live. I want to feel alive. So I got to the point where I knew my brain was stuck in a state of fight or flight of like, what if I fail? What if I die? What if? Came back to the present moment. You are alive, you are alive. Then asked myself, how do you want to feel? I want to feel alive. I want to feel alive. And that was where the fear set in because I
Mm.
realized I was living from a state of doing and not being, and I had no idea how to feel alive. And after that, that's where energetic time management was born because I was like, what would an alive person do? How would she plan her day? If she had 10 minutes today and that's all she had the energy for, what would she do? She's going to get out of bed. She's going to take a shower. Maybe that's it. She checked her box. Next day, get out of bed, take your shower, go for a little walk. And so now the way that I lead my work, my parenting, my relationships, myself, my health, my calendar is how do I want to feel today? What do I
Mm.
need to adjust to feel that way rather than what can I get done today? And when I'm
Yeah.
aligning with the feeling, I actually get more done and I'm more productive.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that if you actually felt like you get more done and you're more productive with the energetic time management. Because I'll just tell you, this is how I see it play out for me a lot. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but my kind of like go-to response is like a freeze response. When I get like overwhelmed or anxious or whatever it is, I just find that I typically just freeze. Like I've had periods in my business where, like I'll just come into my office and sit down at my desk and logically, it's like even though I know it's kind of what you were saying before, I know what I should be doing. I just can't get myself to do it. It's like there's a list of things that I know that like I need to do. It was just like I just felt completely frozen.
Mhm.
Because to your point, like my brain was just so focused on the time, right? Like the 7 or 8 hours that I had to give that day. And, this whole laundry list of things that like I needed to cram within that time. And the irony of it is like I would hardly end up getting any of it done because I just sit there. Like I mean, I sit there and I tinker and like I do this and I do that. And like maybe I check off like one or two things, but I just like go through my entire day feeling tense, feeling tight, just like focusing on the time, focusing on the list. And then, of course, it just becomes like this, self-fulfilling prophecy or this like perpetuating cycle. Cause then I get to the end of my day and I'm like, well, I didn't get anything done today. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which just like increases the anxiety and the overwhelm that just like bleeds into the next day. And then it's like that cycle just keeps going and going and going and going. And so I'm thinking, because of course, like that's where my brain went is like, is it more productive to focus on the energy versus the time? But as you're speaking through this, I'm like, okay, well, that's scenario A where I'm like super focused on the time versus like scenario B where I can go into a day and ask and answer the question, how do I want to feel today? Answer that question and then like reverse engineer it, work backwards from there of like, okay, if I want to feel a certain way, if I can identify that and know that's how I want to feel,
Mhm.
then what do I do? Like,
Yeah.
how do I,
How do I get this
what,
to-do list done?
yeah, like, what things do I do? What things do I not do? Like, what do I prioritize? What do I deprioritize? Like, and so as you're saying this, I'm like, oh yeah, like of course you would get more done that way. Like I've
Mhm.
lived the other way. I've lived the other way for a long, long time. That's like focused on the calendars and the planners and the blocking and the this and the that. And I feel like I've tried it all, and it still just creates this experience for me personally where I'm like, I'm not getting stuff done. Then I feel like crap at the end of my day because then I'm telling myself I didn't get anything done. And it's just, again, it's just day after day after day after day. So,
I love this because like I work with a lot of ambitious people and they're like, I want to go to the next level. Like I've achieved success, but now I want to go to the next level. And the
mm,
fear of going to the next level is that they're going to burn out. So they won't do it because they're like,
mm,
how is this going to get better for me at the next level? I've already checked the success boxes and I'm kind of unfulfilled because I went after what I thought I needed to go after. I got the education. Okay, now I build a business or I have the kids or I have the family. I go on the vacation. I just spoke to a woman. I just did a webinar right before this conversation and I've been talking a lot about time richness and it's a play off of this energetic time management, but I'm like, time is my thing. I almost died. I almost ran out of lifetime.
mm,
And here we are going, we want to have more quality time with our families. We want to have a better quality of life, but we're so addicted to our goddamn to-do list that if you actually look at it, most of it is busy work anyways, and it's not aligned with our bigger vision. Like we're hanging out with people that do not bring us joy because they asked us, do you want to go for a walk today? Can I pick your brain? Can I do this? And we don't know how to hold a boundary or say, I don't have the capacity for that. Like, you need to know where you're going and what your vision is and how you want to feel in your vision. But we are addicted to being doers and not beers. And the
mm,
only being that we can do typically is feel our anxiety, feel our overwhelm, feel our fight, our flight, our freeze. And we're like, well, I have feelings, but they're usually here knocking on the door, giving me a mild panic attack or sleepless nights or something like that. I'm like, imagine feeling joy, imagine feeling fulfillment and contentment, but also still having the privilege to go after more. And the woman I was speaking to on my webinar, she's a dentist, a traditional dentist, but she does have a functional approach to dentistry. She calls it, it's called biological dentist. And she came in and she's like, all right, I have a brick and mortar. I'm not selling my practice. I'm still this, but I'm observing myself um, living for my vacations, like waiting for my
Mm.
vacation. And I said, what is the difference now? And she goes, I went on vacation to recover from my life. Now I know how to incorporate that in my day to day. And when I go on vacation, it's all about connection. It's the connection and the experience I get to have with my children rather than wanting to escape my life. I enjoy all aspects of it now. And when the challenge hits, I know how to manage it differently. So it's a completely different way to think. It's a different identity.
Yeah.
Um, it's also weird because I've observed myself. I talk a lot about parenting and relationships. I started my career as a social worker and helping people see and understand children's behavior, which is just understanding human behavior. And so people cannot talk to me. They won't say a word. They can tell me what they want, but I know they're lying. I always say buyers are liars. Like I know when people say one thing, their behavior, their action, their habits will show me something else. And it may be a belief system, it may be an insecurity, but they're just it speaks volumes. And so I started this teaching people how to look at their children's emotional behavior and then teaching them to read their own emotional behavior. You can lie to yourself all you want and say, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. But yet you feel angry and resentful and you don't know how to manage the anger or resentment. Your resentment is showing you that you've crossed boundaries with yourself, or you let people cross boundaries with you. And it's all there to lead you back home. And so I see with women like, oh, I have so much on my to do. I have so much. I have to do this and this and this. And I'm like, but you have to get to a point where you realize you're choosing that. And it's okay. It's scary to learn a new language. It's scary to learn a new skill and then to be held accountable to it because you have this perfect life or it looks so good on the outside. And you're like, oh, it's uncertain. You develop a level of competency, especially when you're in your 30s and 40s and you're like, I've been gaining momentum with this. And then all of a sudden you have that look in the mirror moment, or you have children, they're triggering something in you. And you're like, I don't understand this. And it's scaring the shit out of me. And I'm
Mm.
telling you, time equals life. And when you can figure out how do I want to feel in my life, it's very different than how much can I get done today. Because I'm still a doer. I still love a good, I have a team, so they like to hold me accountable. I hate living in a sauna, but they love giving me asana tasks. And
Yeah.
I will even do that with my tasks. I'll be like, what's the purpose of this? What's the value of this? Are we just doing busy work? And so I've trimmed the fat in every area of my life, and everyone is so grateful for it because we become more profitable, we have more time, we have more energy, we are making a bigger impact by doing less better. And it's just a completely different way to think and live.
Yeah. The doing less better. It's a hugely radical shift to think about time and your to-do list. Like especially I think with moms or parenthood in particular, because I think like another big part of parenthood is just like the lists and like the mental load that everyone's always talking about, and like all the things you have to do and all the things you have to remember and the appointments and the forms and the this and the that and the laundry and like all the stuff that comes with it. And your point, like I love that example you gave us about your personal trainer, because it's just like 60%, right? 60% doing less better and focusing on how you want to feel. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I can already hear. It's like, and I'm
I
sure you do
wanted to
this
play
too, because
devil's
like you already
advocate.
know what like people
Yeah.
are gonna say to
Yeah.
this, right?
Go. Let's do it.
Right. So response to, somebody who's like, but if I don't do it, no one's gonna do it.
Hmm.
Like there's this list and it's gotta get, these are things that have to get done. And if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. Because I think maybe people misconstrued it and maybe they think that you're saying slash
It
your
still
to-do
gets
list, or
done.
like don't get stuff done that you actually do need to get done. And I know that's not what you're saying, but that's something I hear a lot. Well, if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it.
Yeah, and we see good little real trends about that too. And I'm telling you right now, as a woman, you are powerful AF. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. maybe if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. And I too have that story. Actually, my story is, why do I always need to be the responsible one? Why do I need to be the
Mm,
strong one? And I know that when that story is coming up, that is a symptom and a sign that, one, I'm kind of acting like the victim of my life and my circumstance. And I'm a very curious person. I haven't always been this way. I mean, I like to hold on to a story, lather it all over myself, and be like, oh, why do I always have to be the one to do this? Why do I have to be the responsible one? If I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. But then I ask myself, why do I think I'm the only one who can? And it
mm,
always comes back to trust. It comes back to trusting other people, which goes back to, somebody has let us down. And I had to be the responsible child. I had to be the responsible, strong child. And, that's my identity. And so
yeah.
in my strength, I lead a team very, very well. In my weakness, or in my shadow side of that, I will overdo. And so you just need to know the strength of your personality. You need to know the strength of your quote unquote trauma and where you've been positioned and what that is, and stand in that strength. But in the shadow, you're going to get these stories of, if I don't do it, nobody does. And as a practical application of this for the sake of a podcast, is write, brain dump, brain stop, write down pen and paper of everything that's on your list that feels so overwhelming. And then I challenge you to take one tiny, tiny action and delegate it, and watch your emotional reaction to it. And so this could be something as simple as, like, we're headed back to school, back to school mode, paperwork, like clothes, organizations, blah, blah, blah. There, this year, and every year gets lighter and lighter and lighter, because my husband actually feels safe. Okay.
Mm,
Keyword safe, doing these things without me biting his head off. Like, hey, I took the kids shopping for clothes. Old me would have been like, what did they wear? How much did you spend? Like, what quality of socks are they? What are their, like, the control in me? And I've said that to people, and they're like, I could never, I could never. And I'm like, listen, there's more to life than that. And yeah, sure, but just start with something. And most of the time, like, your children are old enough. Like, the people I'm attracting now, because of my age and life cycle, yeah, they got teenagers, and that's a whole other can of worms. Like, challenge your kids to fill out their own paperwork. Like, it may be
hmm.
shit and they may cry and have a tantrum about it, but how are they going to do this when they're older?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think that that's a really important point that you're making. Again, it goes back to, I think in instances like this, we always kind of want to play the victim a little bit. And that story that you were saying, or that narrative that you have, when you said that, I don't think I've ever consciously recognized that I have also had that narrative, the narrative of like, why do I have to be the one that does everything? Why do I have to be the responsible one? Why do I have to be the one that like always has it together and can never, like break down, or can never like inconvenience or whatever? But, I think that's probably just like my oldest daughter energy coming through, right? And to your point, like, yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot that happened, like oldest daughter, oldest of three girls, that kind of like plays into that. I mean, even now, like just in the life that I'm living now, like I can see that narrative come through a lot. But I think it's really interesting what you said about taking ownership over your own personal narrative around it, but also too making sure that you are creating an environment where you can be supported.
Yeah.
Um,
I
it's like,
always think, sorry, I was going to say, I
no, it's
always
okay, go
think
ahead.
about this too, because I'm married. And
Mhm.
a lot of people, like, I will attract a lot of single moms, or people who feel like they are in a single relationship, and they're like, well, my husband is not supportive, or he travels a lot, or my partner, they're just not on board with where I'm going, and I don't know where the future is going to take me. I think about this a lot, and I talk about it a lot with my husband, but I do probably think about this more than I should. But I think it's because I came into mothering single. I'm like, what would I do? And I tell my husband all the time, he's probably in the other room, he's going to say something after I get off of here, but I appreciate him more and more and more. Um, especially when he's not around, of the what he holds and how much he truly supports me. Learning to receive that support coming into our partnership, being a single mother previously, was very difficult for me, and my walls were very thick and very high for a long time. And over the years, I've realized the surrendering of receiving help, because it is vulnerable to receive help,
Yeah.
and just to pay for it. Like, I think like giving up your dollar bills, like you're just like, oh, I can't. And that too is a whole money mindset and growth opportunity where, like, the identity around not making my children's lunches, not, and it doesn't even bring me that much joy. I mean, if it brought me joy, I would do it. But like the identity of releasing that, and letting them do it or letting somebody else do it, I was like, I am not a good woman. I'm not a good mother. And it's like observing the story we tell ourselves, because my husband and I's roles kind of reversed, where he became a little more domesticated. And I was like, I had a little identity crisis with that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Where do I want to be in this? What do I want to do? Do I want to do the laundry, or can I release that? And I was like, I can release that. But
Yeah.
like, observe your story with these things, but also ask yourself, where is this just resistance? Like, do I not want to hire childcare because I truly can't afford it? Or does it just make me incredibly emotionally uncomfortable because I'm looking at the dollar amount or the hourly amount? Maybe I'm making just as much. Or it's like you're going to have to slowly release the reins of the control on these things to just try new things. And
Yeah.
but so much of it is step one, just like, where am I over nurturing, over giving, over, like, literally,
Mhm.
like, let go of Amazon, let go of the excessive amount of crap that you are buying your children to please them because you feel so guilty. Save that money and invest it in hiring somebody to help you clean, hiring somebody to just meal prep some extra food for you, and reallocating your resources of time, energy, and money into what really matters, like the connection, the quality, your health. And yes, people are going to be uncomfortable when you make that shift, but this narrative, just stop for a moment and going, how am I contributing to this problem? And the other thing
Mm.
I like to do is a how can I attitude, like, how can I? Rather than going, oh, I always have to be the
That's a great
responsible one.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how can
To
I?
ask and
How can
answer.
I? And I'll go for a walk. I will bring a problem with me and I will be like, on this walk, it's my how can I attitude. How can I find that new client? How can I outsource more? How can I ask for help? And the whole time I'm focused on how can I, and I have my little notes section out on my phone, and I come back with so many ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could just, I mean, the whole time I was just, I mean, over here, just, it's so good. There have been like studies after studies that have shown, they evaluate ways that we can like spend our money that bring us the most like happiness, fulfillment, joy, or whatever. And it's always shown that like buying back your time,
Yeah.
which I think is like the theme of today's conversation with time, like buying back your time is one of the best uses of money that you can have that you can do that leads to the most increase in happiness and fulfillment. And to your point, I like the tips that you gave us about just being discerning about that of is this just emotionally uncomfortable? But the way that I approach it, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast too, convenient or like convenience, I call it convenience, but like really what I'm doing is I'm buying back my time. That's where I spend a ton of my money. Like if you were to look at my spending, it's like I'm paying a lot of people who are better at things, more proficient at things, that like doing things more than I like doing them, to do them for me. And I think that's the thing, like in society or on social media, it's like, oh well, you have a house cleaner, must be nice. Oh, you have someone mowing your lawn, must be nice. And it's like, yeah. And also, I don't spend a lot of money on new clothes. I don't spend a lot of money on designer things. I don't spend a lot of money on like having a luxury car. I spend my money to like buy back my time so that I don't have to spend my time doing things that I don't want to do. And the way that I identify it is like as I'm doing something, do I feel that like heaviness, or like do I just feel that like resentment energy, right? Where I'm like I do not want to be doing this with my time. And if there's some, like I said, if there's somebody else that can be doing it better or more efficient than me, it's like outsource, outsource, outsource. I feel like that is a strength of mine. But to your point, there is like, especially with motherhood, there is this whole stigma of it. Like, well, what type of mother am I if I don't cook for my children? Or what type of mother am I if I don't do my kids' laundry? Or there's all this like other like drama that's attached to it. But I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. I just wanted to add my thoughts there, which are basically the same thoughts you have, but it's just we're aligned there. Like
Yeah, and
overcoming
it's
overspending approved.
yes, and being mindful of like there's no one right way. And like
Yeah.
when it comes to money, that whole world is fascinating to me because the traditional model is eat beans and rice and restrict, restrict, restrict.
Yeah.
And then I get into this world and I'm like, how do I want to feel? And then I'm getting traditional advice, like money advice, going, and they're saying to me, like, restrict, restrict, restrict. And I'm like, this is not aligned with my values. So how can I like invest in making more money, but invest in having more time and feeling alive and aligned and realizing I had to find like non-traditional money people that were aligned with my values. And I was like, okay, here we are. Yay. Now
Yeah.
we're aligned. Now you get my vision. And I think when you just think differently, you have to find your aligned people. And that has played out in every area of my life. But this whole buying back of time, you're gonna have to do things you don't want to do. And if you're like, oh wow, I just keep outsourcing now and I'm not making enough money. Well, guess what? That's where you get to focus your energy and go, is this financially feasible? Like we have this big grandiose life vision and then we're not aligning. It's like the chicken or the egg situation. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, if you can't afford it yet, you need to buy back your time and energy, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, so that you have the capacity to make more of what you want or learn new skills on how to make more money. And I just had this conversation with a woman and I was like, you think it's a time issue? You need to make more money. Like you are living at the poverty line and you need to make more money. And the reason why you don't want to move or create change and you're blaming everybody else around you for why you don't have enough. I'm like, I am sorry, but you need to either start a side hustle and a business or you need to get a new job because the physical money that's coming in, this is not a time issue. And we need to look at all three resources and we need to have radical, honest conversations with ourselves of like, where are my energy leaks? Where am I getting stuck? And when you start this journey, you may think every area of your life needs to blow up and change. And you just need to start with one and just ask yourself, how do I want to feel? What do I need to feel that way? And just 10 minutes at a time, slow pivots. You could be like a little ship, just slow
Yeah.
turns. And I'm living proof that you can do this. And so are a lot of my clients. And you just need to start and you need to like have a bigger vision and stop pretending that feeling like shit equals success.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect place to end us. Thank you so much for this conversation today. It's been super enlightening. I have so enjoyed talking with you. And I know that you just provided us so much golden nuggets that people can take with them and just to start thinking about money differently, thinking about time differently, thinking about parenting and motherhood differently. Like I know we covered a lot today, but just thank you. Before we wrap up, tell us where everyone can find you. I know you have a lot of resources, but tell us where we can find Heather.
Yeah, I hang out a lot on the podcast, Emotionally Uncomfortable. You can check it out there. And I always love when people listen to an episode on someone else's podcast and then go find me on Instagram and send me a DM and just tell me your biggest takeaway. So at Heather Chauvin, Chauvin on Instagram.
Perfect. And I will make sure to put all that information in the show notes too, so people can find you easily.
Thanks,
Thank
Paige.
you, Heather. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.